What's up, everybody? It's Mei Holmes, the host of True Transitions. In this very special episode, we leave you inspired and motivated. Two sisters, Kerri and Nicole. They own over 16 McDonalds in the Compton area. They employ more than 1,500 minorities and are also a driving force in their community. But before their success, they weathered the storm as they transitioned from corporate America to entrepreneurship. Kerri and Nicole, thank y'all so much for joining me today. How do y'all feel?
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, we're excited. Thank you.
How's life going? What's new?
Well, life for me is very good. So I will, in the next week, be turning 50.
Congratulations.
So I am having a party, and the name of the party is Bubbly, Blush, and Bliss. It's Nikki's 50th, so I'm ready to party and have fun.
Oh, congratulations. Happy birthday.
Thank you.
That's beautiful. What about you? Anything new?
Well, just by contrast, I was supposed to have my 45th celebration last year, and the Rona. And so I am having a party next month, which is a players' ball.
Okay.
So that gives you a little taste of the difference in our taste. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that. I'd like to have a good time and party and be around good friends and good music. So
You guys already have it planned out. Is it going to be the big old shebang, or is it going to be a small, what's the idea?
No, mine is a big shebang. Yes. So my husband recently turned 50, and he's Bayesian from Barbados. So we went back and had a celebration for him. It was like a whole weekend. And so I said, well, babe, I'm putting all of your weekend into my one night. So that tells you how it's going to be.
Something tells me nothing you guys do is small.
correct.
It's a thing.
It's actually, we sometimes feel like it's a problem. Like, why can't we just rein things in?
It's impossible.
Do it, yeah.
But with everything, it is so funny too. It always kind of starts out like kind of small-ish, but by the end, and then I'm always like, no, Kerri, we can't do this, we can't do this, we can't do this. And then as we're planning, I'm like, well, we need to add this, and we need to add this, and we need to add this. So yeah, it just ends up being extra large.
Listen, I'm a big fan of go big or go home, okay?
Yes, that's what we do. That's what we do. And it's always, we have the opportunity to celebrate a lot. And so we work hard and we try to play hard as best we can to reward ourselves every now and then.
I love that. That's beautiful. Self-care is very important, especially when you guys are always busy. It seems like you're always on the go. You always have meetings. You always have to take care of multiple employees. You have, 1,500 employees?
Yeah, thereabouts. Yes, amongst our restaurants. Yeah, we're very lucky to have a really great team of people. And as you already said, we are in very ethnically diverse neighborhoods. And so we employ a lot of Latino families, a lot of African American families, a lot of Asian American families. And so we're very blessed that people want to work with us and that we have the opportunity to employ people in the neighborhoods where we have restaurants.
That's amazing. Now, before the glitz and glam, you guys, you're throwing 2 big parties. I can't wait to see it. You bought a whole warehouse. You just got married. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And, you're living this great, fantastic life, but I'm sure it didn't always start this way, right? So tell me about your mother and what she had to go through as a Black woman purchasing her first McDonald's restaurant. How did she even get into McDonald's? Was it something she always wanted to do?
So, we could really talk about Mom and her story for hours. But as Mom says, we're going to make it quick, right? Or at least try. So Mom was born and raised in the segregated South in New Orleans. And an interesting story, all the good food comes from New Orleans, right? And so my mom never learned how to cook. And she told my grandmother, I don't need to learn how to cook because I'm going to be a businesswoman and I'm going to have somebody who's going to cook for me. So that was already her mindset, right? But she comes out here to California, and when she was in college, and she went to school and became a rehabilitative therapist. Then she met my dad and they got married, and it was actually her sister who was a McDonald's owner operator, her and her husband. So my aunt and uncle were McDonald's owner operators in San Diego. They were actually recruited by a friend of theirs who worked at McDonald's. And so then my parents, thought about it and decided that they would then, my father was a LAPD officer. So they decided they would leave their very, great careers to try this McDonald's thing. So they got into it in the 80s. They started with one restaurant, and then because they were doing well, got another restaurant. And then somewhere along in those years, they came to a place where the marriage was ending, so they got a divorce. And the interesting story that Mom always tells is that when the divorce happened, at that time, my mom's name as a female wasn't even on the franchise agreement. It was all in my dad's name because that's just kind of how you did things back then. But she was really the operational force of the restaurant. She was the one, opening, closing, doing all those things. So she was able to work with McDonald's and convince them that she should be the one to take over the restaurants. So in the divorce, she was awarded the restaurants, and she went on to have a career build her career as a single African-American female franchisee. And so, it's always interesting to talk about from where we were to where we are now. And yes, many things have changed, but many things have really stayed the same. So we still live in the house that we grew up in. So I live there with my husband and my mom, and in the same neighborhood. And, it's always been, I think we learned from my mom in her process of coming from those humble beginnings, how to really stay grounded and humble. And so I find that as a point of pride that we still, have these deep connections to where we were, who we were, and, use that to propel us forward.
And when my mom tells her story, Nicole started there, but she was always so proud about telling, she will tell you if you talk to her for 10 minutes, my mother was a maid and my father was a longshoreman. And, neither of them, I think, got past 8th grade, maybe, neither of my mother's parents. And so even for her generation, all of her brothers, I believe, are college educated or went to the Army. And so for Nicole and I to be the third generation from that, to have gone to college and we both have graduate and master's degrees. It's just a really, I think, amazing story for our family to have come from such humble beginnings in the segregated South to the ability to, yes, we definitely still live in the house that we grew up in, but to have the opportunity now through years of hard work and dedication to throw these parties. So it really is so much progress, I think, within a family of just 2 or 3 generations. I think it's a real blessing. And Nicole is right. My mother always instilled in us. It was like one of the worst things that you could be was to be selfish and to be ungrateful. And so we, I think, have so much gratitude in our hearts just for the opportunity to do and have the things that we have. I think we approach everything that we do with humility and gratitude. So, I think it's a great story, but, mixed in that, we're not flossing. We're not, that's just not who we are. But, we treat ourselves as we can. So, it's always this mix of humility and gratitude with, all of the things that this opportunity presents to us.
Now, I can tell both you guys obviously work off each other so much, and I can tell that family was so important when you guys were growing up. Now, both you guys took 2 different careers while your mother was still running the McDonald's, correct?
Yes.
So when you went in your career and you were in legal, is that correct?
Yes.
And Nicole, you were in social work, is that right?
Yes.
When you guys decided to make that transition from corporate America to entrepreneurship, what was that like? How did you know it was time?
For me, it was twofold. At the time, I was working for the Superior Court, and I was doing custody evaluation. So when people were getting divorced or separated, what was going to happen to the kids? So it was definitely a very stressful job. And I had moved back to Los Angeles from living in the Bay Area, and I lived with my mom for a little while. So I had the opportunity to kind of see her as she was working in the McDonald's world while I was doing my thing. So the stress of the job was one part of it. And then the other part is that I was at work one day in my office, and a young woman came in. I don't even remember how or why we started talking, and she was telling me about how her boss had encouraged her to go to college, and about how her boss had kind of changed her life and was really, pushing her to move things along in her career and education. Anyway, we keep talking, and it turned out her boss was my mom. And so for me, it was like, I'm thinking, oh, this lady's just going making burgers every day. But I didn't understand the impact that she really had on people's lives. So when I kind of put those together and thought, like, okay, the things that I'm doing as far as improving people's lives through social work, you can do that in so many different ways. And honestly, now, more of our job is about using the skills that I had as a social worker as far as dealing with people, talking to people, understanding people. So once I kind of saw those two put together, I was like, okay, I'll give it a try.
Were you scared? Were there fears, doubts? How did you feel?
I wasn't really scared, but there was one moment when my mom, it was like late at night one night, and she was like, well, I just want you to know, if you think it's going to be easier work than you're doing right now, it's not. And I'm like, well, thanks, Mom, for making me
Way to
really
encourage me.
Right, exactly. So, no, I don't know that I was scared. Of course, I'm a little apprehensive because I don't know what it's going to be. But I think in my mind, I always thought, you know what, I can always come back to social work. Like, if this doesn't work out, I know that I'm good at this and I can come back to it. So why not give it a shot?
Mm-hmm. Kerri, when you made that jump, did you feel like it was easier for you because you knew more of your family members were in the McDonald's franchise area and you could go back, or did you have a different situation?
Totally different. So for me, I knew since the 10th grade, the only thing I ever wanted to do was be a lawyer. I was very clear at the time. I went to college and I double majored in rhetoric and political science because that's what you needed to do in my head to go to law school. I went straight from undergraduate into law school, straight from law school into a firm, and I loved it. I was lucky enough to have found employment law, and I found the practice fascinating. I loved being a litigator. Being a litigator is very suitable to my personality. And so for me, I just lucked out, and I loved my career. And I was perfectly fine. I knew that my mother and my sister were both very successful, and I cheered them on from the sidelines, and they were doing all these great things and getting awards and, doing great. And I was like, y'all do that, good job, and I'll be over here doing my legal thing. So had zero interest or intention, desire, just, you guys do that thing, I'm doing mine. And had some really great job opportunities. And then I got pregnant. And that, for me, is kind of what switched things. So at the time that I got pregnant, I was living in the Bay Area. And then I eventually moved to Southern California. And so that was the first time in a long time I had lived near my sister and my mom. And so I was in closer proximity to observe what they were doing. And I was a new mom at the time. And so if you had asked me, so my oldest is about to be 10. If you had asked me 12 years ago what kind of mom I was going to be, I would have been like, I'm going to have that baby, and then I'm going to find me a nanny. I'm going to be back to work in 6 weeks. Mm-hmm. I'm going to hand it off. I'm a career woman. And then my oldest son got here, and I was like, ugh. Nobody else can take care of my baby. Like, what else, So obviously, I wisened up. But I continued for the first year of his life working at the company I was working at the time. And it was an interesting balance, but it really kind of opened up my eyes to think of legacy differently. And to see the legacy and the impact up close and personal because I was living closer to them, what they were able to do through their restaurants, really seeing it firsthand on a regular basis. And I thought, I would hate for this legacy to end with them. I now have someone in this world that I could potentially hand this legacy off to. Also found it very appealing to potentially work with my family again, for the first time. And to be closer to them. I don't know, for motherhood softened me in a way I would never have imagined. And so it just gave me an overall different view of family. We've had conversations about, what that means and how we work together and move together as a family. But I never would have expected that having a kid would make me then want to be more with my family. Like I don't, that should be a natural connection, I think, but it just wasn't for me. And then he got here and I was like, yeah, this is probably the right thing to do. And then, by the way, what a perk to have your boss be your mom and your sister when you have a little one. So that's just the beauty of family business, because they're there to support you and to help you in ways that, you don't always get from corporate America. But I will say I was terrified for two different reasons. The first being, I think I really considered law to be very complex and challenging. And I was like, I'm about to go work at McDonald's and be, flipping burgers all day. This is going to be boring. I'm not going to be stimulated and challenged. And then I got there on the first day and I was like, I cannot even keep up. Like, I cannot keep there enough fries for the drive-through to be moving. Like, I was challenged in ways that I never anticipated. And I was so grateful for that, right? And then, of course, as you move through the program and things become more complex and more challenging and you're a manager, I just found it so gratifying, but I was scared that I wouldn't get that. I also was afraid lawyers, we notoriously do not do math. So I'm like, am I going to be able to really get the business side of this? I could write a 50-page brief on, discrimination law, but can I actually run a business? And so I doubted that. I mean, I had specific conversations with my husband. I didn't have the confidence that Nicole had. Like, I can do this. And I guess I could have gone back to law, but I didn't want that. And then last, I was following in not just my mother's, but in my sister's footsteps. And for both of them to be so successful individually, like Nicole was not just like in the business following my mom. I knew she was independently successful and respected on her own. And I'm like, what am I going to bring to the table? Am I going to be able to be a good partner to them? Am I going to be able to impact people? And those are things that I want. I want to be impactful. I want to bring something, and I just didn't know. And one example of this was, as you're going through the process of becoming a McDonald's owner-operator, you have to go to a place called Hamburger University. So in my journey of going to Hamburger University, I was 7 months pregnant, different from my mom who had young girls and different from my sister. And they were like, well, we both won the Golden Hat Award in our week at McDonald's, so we're expecting you to do the same. And I'm like,
it's a prestigious award.
We'll talk about the award in a
we'll
second.
talk about that, right? And I'm like, I'm 7 months pregnant. Like, it's not the same, but that expectation it was the same, right? So I'm like, I'm not going to win the Golden Hat. I won another award, but I didn't win the Golden Hat. And so I had to kind of really be okay with my journey is different. And then Nicole and mom had to be okay with her journey is different. And that's an interesting family dynamic to have to work through. So, my transition was different than Nicole's. I won't say harder or easier, but it was different. And I did have a lot more trepidation for kind of those reasons that I shared.
It sounded like you were able to just handle it all so graciously. But of course, that's the outside in. During that transition phase, what was probably the hardest thing you had to deal with, and how did you get through it?
My personality is one to go someplace, hit the ground running, and have an impact. And I think for me, I had to figure out how to go into a place that was already so successful and find my way. We had, at the time I came in 2013, we had a longtime director of operations that he and my mom were lock in step. And Nicole and him at that time also lock in step. And I'm like, no, like how do I get in there? How do I make impact? But you guys aren't listening to me, and how do we do that? And
Would you call it imposter syndrome?
I don't know if I felt like I shouldn't be in the space, but I felt as if I was an imposter, as much as I didn't know how to make my way in the space. Like I was okay with being there, but how do I do that and be successful and impactful in the way I felt like I wanted to be? And I mean, there was this one morning, I don't know if Nicole remembers this, I don't remember what the issue was, but it was probably like 7 o'clock in the morning. And Nicole and I were on the phone, as we often are, and she asked me a question, and we were in the middle of some issue, and I'm just crying, and then she's sad because I'm crying, so then she starts crying, and we're just working through trying to figure out it was really my struggle with figuring out how I could have a voice. That's really how I would say. I was trying to figure out what my voice was going to be, and Nicole, unfortunately, was trapped in the middle, I think. But she loves me so much, but she's a businesswoman, so it's complicated. It was a really hard transition. And I know that she went through some difficulties in her transition as well, but it was a emotional time for quite some time, working through that. And the key for us, I think, and I don't know if this is oversimplifying, but it's just honest and respectful communication. And I think we just at our core, we just respect each other so much. And then we've always been very, very good friends. And I give her all the credit. Every time I get the chance, I give her the credit. She is a phenomenal big sister. She has always nurtured me, loved me, included me, in whatever was happening in her life. And so that always, I guess, made me respect her, like her. We've always gotten along. So at our core, there's just love and respect. And so we can talk through it. It's emotional. It's hard. We're emotionally tough. We're tough. Mm-hmm. It's hard for us to access, I think, those emotional, vulnerable sides of ourselves, but we just talk through it.